Well, it's fall, if you haven't noticed. I mean, a few indicators here in the studio, don't you think? All these pumpkins. Well, you all have been pummeling me with all kinds of questions about what to do with pumpkins. And I agree. Piling them up by the front door just doesn't get it. There's some fun things you can do with them as vessels, or I don't know, just get a little more creative. And we're going to cover some of that in today's show. Before we go any further, I'd like to thank our sponsors. The Garden Home Vlog is made possible by Gilbert H. Wild & Son, who've been growing beautiful perennials since 1885. Ralston Family Farms, a farm family producing delicious rice for your table. First Community Bank, whose heart is in the community, as well as Sun Patience, Super Cal Petunias, and Dragon's Breath Celosia. And Crystal Bridges, Museum of American Art. Check out my website to learn more about the brands we love. So let's take a look at some creative ways to use these beautiful pumpkins in your autumnal decor. Maybe some things you haven't thought about. You've asked a lot of good questions over the past couple of weeks, but let's just talk and review about some of the varieties of pumpkins. Of course, this is your classic Jack or jack-o'-lantern pumpkin, we all know. And they come in all sorts of sizes, from the little small New England pie pumpkins to this larger sort of jack-o'-lantern, which is very beautiful color of orange, to these Cinderella pumpkins, which I like very much because they're rather flat and they stack nicely, to pumpkins that are white. This year we used about 26 different kinds of pumpkins on our pumpkin house, and it turned out very colorful, as you can imagine. So if you get really crazy with pumpkins, you can always build a pumpkin house. But let's go into just a few tips on how to keep a pumpkin fresh for the longest period of time. I've had them last all the way into, well, February. And it starts with choosing the right pumpkin. First of all, you want to make sure that there are no soft spots on it. You want to make sure that the stem is intact. And look at the bottom of the pumpkin and just see if there are any bruises or if there are any cuts on it that haven't dried, because this can open up the pumpkin to rot. And no one likes a rotten pumpkin. So the flatter ones certainly stack very well. You can have Cinderellas or you can have fairy tale pumpkins. They all stack beautifully. And then the other thing that I like to do is, if I'm cutting a jack-o'-lantern, one of the things that you'll find is that the top or the cap often will shrink if you have a candle in there, just from the heat. To make that last longer, if you'll just take some petroleum jelly, like this, and go around the edges and seal the moisture in, as well as on the bottom, this cap will last much longer. And if you'll go through, just like you're applying makeup, and go around any cut place with the petroleum jelly. Now, the larger the flame you have in there, of course, it's going to deteriorate quicker, particularly if it burns the flesh on the inside. So you might want to use one of these little LED lights. Some of them have a strobe. And you can just pop those in to give your pumpkin a scary sort of look. I've also found if I place the pumpkins on the cool side of the house, where they're out of direct sun, they tend to last longer. And I've even had some folks just throw them in big tubs of water and let them soak and hydrate before you start carving and cutting on them. And that will help them last several weeks longer as well. All right, now let's talk about using pumpkins as vessels. Now, if you followed my show over the years, you know that I've done this often, where I'll take a pumpkin, and this one I've already started. I just take a little saw-like knife. When you open the pumpkin, you can see here that you've got all the seed. It's just a matter of cutting that off. And I save the seed from these pumpkins. And what's interesting about it, from a seed collection standpoint, you may say, oh, well, okay, this seed came out of a Lumina pumpkin. So all the pumpkins that come from plants produced by these seeds will be Lumina. Not so, thanks to our pollinators. In a pumpkin patch that has multiple varieties, They're going to carry pollen from one flower to the next, spreading the genetics of pumpkins. So this seed could have one that's maybe a cross between the Lumina and the Cinderella. So Melissa from Maryland asked, what are the tips for using a pumpkin as a vessel? Well, just about what I'm going to show you here, Melissa, is I use a scraper like that, and I love this serrated edge. It really cuts down on the time. You can just take all of that pumpkin out of there, clean it up like this, and go back to the idea of just taking a little bit of petroleum jelly right around the edges of it like this. And if I use this as a flower arrangement vessel, I will line it typically with just a freezer bag. You can just stuff a freezer bag in here where you don't see it. And then you can do flowers. You can put chicken wire in there and do all kinds of flowers. Or you can take, just some ordinary garden plants. Here I have some hosta. Now you'll have your plastic in there, but you can drop hosta down in these like this and make fun planters. And here you can see I've just used some mondo grass. I mean, I'm using really simple things here. I mean, you can go as elaborately as you like with some of these planted plants. Pansies are wonderful in these containers, and they will last, I've had them last up to a month and a half. So they really do last longer, particularly if you'll use that petroleum jelly around the edge. Here I've used just some wild grasses. These are kind of fun with jack-o'-lanterns. But really, here's where you just should use your imagination. I'd love to know what you would put in one of these pumpkins. Maybe some great ideas about perennials or dried things you might find around for fall, or even some flowering annuals. And of course, the classic mum is an easy thing to just drop into one of these, and very, very easy for a holiday party. One thing to keep in mind is kind of grouping them together. I like to use a large pumpkin, couple of small ones. You can mix them up. This could be a mixed combo. You could have a couple of singular ones here. And then the other thing I like to do is you can plant this, because the pumpkin is biodegradable. It becomes compost. So you could just literally plant this pumpkin with the plant directly in the ground. Yep, it really works. The other thing I was talking about is maybe you group some that are planted with those that are not planted, like this. Let's just get these pumpkin entrails out of the way so you can kind of see how lovely this looks. It's a little different, right? Of course, it's always nice to integrate a little light with the pumpkins. And what I've done here is I've started cutting a top out of this little delicata squash. You know, all pumpkins are just big winter squash. Some of them aren't so big. And this is really fun to create a table decoration. I'm going to take a little bit of the petroleum jelly just so it'll last longer. And then you can take these votives like this and drop them in there. And that's a fun way to create little candle holders to sit on a table. Probably one of the most important tips is to remember that the seeds are delicious for toasting. They're edible, and these pumpkins are delicious, and there are so many wonderful recipes for pumpkin. And as I mentioned before, I just like to slice them thinly, roast them in the oven at 350 degrees with some sea salt and black pepper. They're very, very delicious. So give them a try and let us know which one you find is the most flavorful. All right, I hope this has been helpful to you. If you enjoyed this video, please like it. And if you'd like to see additional content as it comes along, just ring the bell and we'll send you a notification. Also, please subscribe to my channel. And we send out a weekly newsletter. Just go to pallinsmith.com. All right, have a great fall.